as a young member of the cast, how aware were you of the Star Trek legacy, and were you immersed in it at all?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone on the planet is aware of the Star Trek legacy. But to be honest, I hadn't known much about it. My grandma is a huge Star Trek fan, so I remember growing up, like always sitting there as a child, like watching Star Trek with her very late at night, and being like, "Who are these orange people? And why are they so serious? And what's going on?" But now, coming into it in this, it's like this being my first introduction into Star Trek. I've been having so much fun. Yeah, and I feel like I almost like learned a new language. There are some people who get it and some people who don't, and for the people who do, I can communicate with them in a different way. Yeah, it's
awesome.
Cool.
Have you had a chance to tap into any other Star Trek lexicon?
I
Do you have any favorite
haven't.
character? Okay.
But my friend Celia is on another Star Trek show, so I'm definitely going to jump into that. And hopefully we can do some stuff together soon. Lower Decks, I got a few episodes of that. It's so fun.
It's great.
It's so fun.
It's so not what you expect.
It's
for
so
turns.
not what you expect. It's
great.
so fun. It reminds me of just watching a show, like a normal sort of like animated series. But so those two, but nothing else. Yeah.
You'll get there.
Yeah, I will. I actually plan on doing the entire deep dive.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
It's a big dive.
I
You'll
plan
be there
on.
for
I
a
mean,
long
even just
time.
like having my Kobayashi Maru episode and stuff. Like, I really plan. I got to like meet the Borg for the first time in my sort of recording session. So going back and seeing the significance of those things, I'm really excited.
What kind of journey is he on? I mean, in your mind, his evolution
Dall.
as this thing is going. How would
Yeah.
you describe what he's evolving into, shall we say?
Yeah, it's, I think Dall kind of sometimes can get a bad rep because he's been so brash before. Just a little brash and bratty. But, when I think about him and I think about, I put my actor hat on and do my backstory moments, he was dropped off by people he cared about a lot to a child labor slave colony and denied access to speak to anyone else. And so imagining what that can do on a mind as it's growing through adolescence, he's probably had to be his own hero a lot of times. And so I think it was an incredible way of, showing the lesson of self-discovery and Dall sort of becoming sort of in a leadership position and learning to empathize with other people after being on a planet like Tars Lamora for so long, and also having this sort of like imposter syndrome and identity crisis of not knowing who he is, never seeing other aliens like himself. I think he has a very big sort of internal journey that can be somewhat elusive to people on first glance of him because he does seem so confident and cocky and sort of doesn't take anything seriously. But I've found most that people who do that sometimes do have a deep inner projection of insecurity. So,
Your use of the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
key.
yeah, and I think it's a through line with all of us too, because even Gwen
it's
sort
so
of
true.
learning that everything she knows is a lie. You know.
Dall is unlike anyone we've seen in Star Trek before, both literally and figuratively.
Totally.
But it seems to be on this journey of self-discovery, which is pretty universal.
Yeah.
And can you speak to what you hope the target audience, the kids watching, learn from Dall?
Totally. I think, my first way into Dall was his storyline and being that he doesn't know who he is. And I felt, sometimes in Hollywood with myself, I don't get to see lots of myself, and specifically in roles in genres like fantasy or sci-fi. So it connected me to Dall immediately. And so I hope younger audiences watching the show can get the sense of that, even if you are different than anybody's ever seen, and even if you do come from somewhere that might even be unbeknownst to you, it doesn't mean that you can't end up in the Starfleet. It doesn't mean that you can't learn and grow and make friends and become a leader. You can, no matter what your circumstances have been, sort of like transcend those things and become sort of, in a leadership position, or just in any position, just solidified. And it's always going to be enough, I want them to leave knowing that they can be enough, no matter what they are, where they come from, who they relate to, what their role is. We're all people, so we're more than meets the eye. Yeah.
But there's a revelation about him, which I don't want to spoil if people haven't seen it, that sets him off sort of in a new way, doesn't it, in terms of when he makes discoveries about himself? So how does that, without going into the super details, but how does
Yeah.
that impact it?
You mean in the second half of
Yeah,
the season?
they've sent us the
Oh, so
first
you've
5
seen it?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a big conversation, you know, because it feels like Dal learning who he is and what he is, and sort of what that means in terms of what he can do in the universe. I think is one of the last limits of Starfleet and Star Trek that I've seen so far, and so I think it's going to be a big conversation in the entire universe. This is going to be the first time something like this has ever happened, and so I'm just honored and privileged to be able to sort of like be the voice of that story happening in this universe. Everybody wants to leave their mark in some way on, the entire franchise as a whole. So I'm just excited that I get to do that. Yeah.
So as we see your character growing up and kind of almost like a coming of age,
Totally.
and maturing and discovering about himself, do you, as being animation, you're a little older, so do you look back and see your, kind of like look back and think about your youth and how that factors in, and
100%.
see it like a new perspective from the
100%. I care about Dal so much, and it's weird because this is my first animated show, so you never know how it's going to be going into it, but I totally have so much love for this like animated fictional character, because he reminds me so much of myself. Just like jump into the ring and fake it until you make it, and just see what happens, and hopefully it all turns out okay, and learn what you need to learn along the way, but just head first even if you're not ready. So that's been most of my life, jumping into things maybe before I was a little ready, and sitting at the table way more confident maybe than I should be, and learning the things along the way to make sure that you're upholding that responsibility. So
Perfect casting. What are you hoping that audiences get out of your character? Like, what are you really looking forward to revealing this season?
yeah, I hope they know
Star
that.
Trek world.
Yeah, there's a big reveal with Dal and who he turns out to be and what he turns out to become. But I really hope that people can take away, again, the empathy for others, that, in this big universe, there are many people and many of us are different than one another. And no matter what age or race or gender or creed or class or species you are, everyone deserves respect and connection. If not love and understanding, connection at least to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love doing on my blog.
Ooh, dope.
Is
great
Star Trek
show.
Prodigy?
Thank you.
With Star Trek Prodigy, are you able to highlight your comedic talents as well, or is this all different genres?
I think so, accidentally sometimes. I think the Hagemans have been super awesome with sort of being open to collaboration, and I think my lack of Star Trek research before this has sort of lent itself to sort of, the performance being sort of not as serious as lots of other Star Trek performances, which I think now is characteristic of Dal. So yeah, I'm really proud of those moments and to be able to bring sort of that type of storytelling to something like Star Trek. I remember doing my first Captain's Log, and I was like, ooh, Captain's Log, number 1.0, and I'm saying all these things, and the Hagemans were this is not how this is done, which kind of makes it awesome because, they are learning, and they have no idea, and they stole a ship, so in a way, jumping in and learning with Dal and all these characters, it's been sort of freeing and I think refreshing for me to
Makes it
jump in.
accessible
Totally.
to newer,
Totally.
younger kids.
Yeah, totally.
So did you know anything about Kate Mulgrow's character, like how important she was to Star Trek?
Now
She's the
that I
first
knew.
female captain?
Yeah, that I
okay.
knew going into it. Yeah, that I knew.
Okay.
My grandma would not let me not know.
Check that off. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
I've known about Kate since before I knew about Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How excited is your grandmother now that you are
Oh
part
my
of
gosh.
her
That's a
favorite?
great question.
For her,
Yes.
it's like I'm a part of the Beatles. It's like it's like
so
shit.
cool.
Me being in Star Trek for her is like as if I was cast in a Marvel movie for
It's like
me.
this is like the best role
This
you've ever
is
done.
like the best. There's nothing that will ever top this. I am like, a Jackson now to her or something. It's like, she's like, you're in Star Trek. You've made
Are you her
it.
favorite grandchild?
Well, now that remains to be seen.
Get a couple extra points now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
What do I have to do?
Definitely
I'm in
not.
Star Trek.
I'm literally
Yeah.
in Star Trek. Yeah.
Is she wearing
I
any
think
of your merchandise?
she hasn't, but I hopefully I hear there's a crossover that some people, I won't name who, get to become live action now.
Oh, right, like Lower Decks.
Exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, hopefully at some point in my life I'm able to do a live action
Appear in
version
the
of
flesh.
Dall. I think that's when she'll get it. Like, yeah.
So the whole crew on the Protostar are they're seeing Starfleet as this ideal, this goal to get to, but are also, because of their pasts, what they've done, afraid of Starfleet.
Yeah.
How is it for you, and if you can speak to it, the rest of the cast, sort of playing that desire to be there, but also the anxiousness of being afraid of what you want,
Yeah.
or being a danger to what you want.
Totally. I love that part of the storyline because it reminds me too that these characters are kids and and teenagers, and so they aren't proud sometimes of what they've done, who they've been, and you know, it's hard because there's always some judgment going into something that somebody reveres a lot, like Starfleet. You know, when you want to be a part of, you know, it's like getting into heaven, right? You know, in terms of like religion in America, you know, it's like you have to do good things. You know, you can be unworthy in terms of your own self and how you think about it. And I think it weighs heavily on them, sort of there's that moral obligation. Have we been good enough? Are we enough to join Starfleet? Is there anything that would exclude us from being able to sort of achieve this sort of like ultimate version of ourselves? And I think that's one of my favorite messages about Prodigy is that, again, it doesn't matter where you come from, who you are, what your relationship is to your parents, what your relationship is to your species or whatever. You can, through trial and learning and the connection of others and your tribe, you can sort of transcend these sort of negative things that you might attach to yourself.
As somebody who's a newbie to Star Trek in all sorts of ways, right on the show and in
Totally.
real life, what do you think of the fact that this show started in 1966? Okay?
That's
And here we
wild,
are in
right?
2022.
Yeah.
And it's still going. It's
Yeah.
a whole different fun. So as an outsider, so now an insider, you know what I mean, as
Yeah.
a newbie to it, what is your feeling about what this whole thing is about?
Yeah, I totally get it. I think before I was like, okay, it's a big franchise and very long time. But now being on our own show, I totally get it. There's so much heart. There's so many different ways to relate. There's such large messages tackled at the same time. It's such an awesome, cool sort of like lore. To me, I always grew up a huge fan of Harry Potter. I wanted to be a part of those worlds so badly, and you know, I get it. And so for me, it makes total sense. It's going to go for many, many more decades. It'll always connect to people because the intention of the show is to highlight humanity. So there's always going to be a place for it.
It's a shame you're not more enthusiastic about
Yeah,
Star Trek.
I know.
I feel I'm a little
I've
disappointed,
been
frankly.
turned. I've been turned.
How has your experience with fans been so far? 'Cause
Yeah.
it's all new to you. I
Totally.
assume.
The last time I was here, we were just premiering the show,
Yeah.
so I didn't get too much feedback, and I haven't gotten the chance yet to like sneak outside and like, you know, explore. But Ella actually showed me the subreddit of Star Trek Prodigy. It's
You
awesome.
always
Oh
throw it.
no,
Okay,
it's
good.
awesome. It's so cool to read. You know, we all think the same, and so people are really loving the show. They're really, really understanding the arcs and getting the characters. And you know, I think any hope of someone coming into something so huge like Star Trek is that we can carve our own little fan base out of the entire pie.
Right, yeah.
And to see that happening and know that, you know, we're on that show and making that happen is really cool.
Have you been to Comic-Cons before?
No, never.
Have
My
you
first
gotten a chance-
Comic-Con was
have you
last
gotten
year.
a chance to walk?
No, but I want to so bad.
I wonder if there's any Prodigy costumes.
I know, that's
That
what
would
I'm
be so
saying.
cool.
I want to dress up as Dall and walk around. Like the irony in that is like so funny to
That was
me.
like, what was it, like Mark Hamill dressed up
Yeah,
as
yeah.
a stormtrooper or
Yeah.
something at
Tom
SACC?
Holland just dressed
Yeah,
up
he
as
does.
Spider-Man.
What's the reaction from like the little kids? Because the adults are all geeking
Oh,
out
yeah.
to their Star Trek, but the kids
Yeah.
are just like, this is just an animated show to them.
Yeah, to me, it's so funny because they actually, most of them kind of got on once the show transferred to Nickelodeon. So now it's cool to see the younger kids. It's like to them, I'm like their. When I was younger, my favorite show on Nickelodeon was Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Right.
Best
Oh
show.
my
It's the
gosh,
best
it's
show.
one of the best shows
Best show.
ever. And some kid told me, he was like, "You're like Aang," and so it's like,
That's,
yup.
that's the best compliment.
Yeah,
ever.
it's the best compliment.
Yeah.
And you know, if you remember Aang, he just wanted to go penguin sledding with his friends, and had all this responsibility thrust upon him. So we connect in some ways, and to me, like you said, that's like the best
Yeah.
compliment ever. Yeah.
Yeah, we
So
quote from Avatar all the time.
I'm
in my family.
obsessed with that show. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you guys.
much. Good
Thank
luck
you
on the
so
show.
much.